Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much to all of you. This is pure gold. But I don't think we've had a chance in our first Q&A to focus on what is our view for this year and what's going to happen in startup talent. Now, I know I haven't prepared you in terms of, giving you some time to prep for it. What are your thoughts? But I thought I'd use it to kind of maybe best do it on the spots in terms of what you think will be good and what you think will be bad. And that could include the technology behind things, the not just the tech, but also perhaps do you foresee big tech making cuts and therefore startups having a wider pool and all that jazz. So maybe what we can do this time is, again, we can start in the same order that we joined initially. I think so. It's who we got. It's Benjamin, Jeff, Margaret, Rosie. Let's say, what are some things that you foresee? Maybe what's a good thing that you think will happen this year that, let's say, hasn't really happened as much other years? And what bad thing do you foresee happening? You guys okay with that? Benjamin, do you want to start?
Yes, challenging question, Antoine. I was interested because I was actually I had a conversation last week with a few people about this. One thing that we know about this year is it's going to be pretty uncertain, and primarily because of the political landscape with the new administration in America versus what's happening in the UK. It's harder to, particularly from an employment point of view. Obviously, employment costs have just got a lot more expensive in the UK, but we may well be seeing the start of a trend of burning some regulation, which could mean that startups are a bit more free and flexible to experiment and do different things. I think we could see some of the people, some layoffs in the tech companies in the US, but I'm not sure they're going to be in the spaces for people who, for technologists, I think it's going to be more in the support functions. So whether that helps the startups, I do not know. I think it's going to be an uncertain year, but I think the one thing, and I'm sure Jeff can talk about this far more eloquently than I can, is the AI and the opportunities we're going to see in AI. I think it's moved so quickly already in 2024 that I think 2025 is going to be a boon year for it. So I'm not sure things are going to change. I don't know how things are going to change from a kind of employment opportunities, or is it going to be a better climate for specific new businesses? But I think if it's going to change anywhere, it's going to have to be in the AI space. So that's my initial thoughts on it. But I think we're in for a slightly strange and not very certain ride, because particularly in America, things are not very predictable in the slightest.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. I could be cruel and say, don't talk about AI, Jeff, but I have a feeling we should let you do that. Go ahead.
I'll be rather quiet otherwise. But having said that, Ben hit on some really, really powerful points, and I'm trying not to let the wave of potential change and disruption overwhelm me relative to what's going to kick off in America from really today onwards. And I'm not being political about it. I'm just saying that there's going to be a heck of a lot of change is all. And I think regulation or deregulation in a lot of cases is likely going to be a major theme, not to mention all sorts of interesting geopolitical and economic issues that are likely going to hit us from a headwinds perspective and or from simply a confusion perspective. Having said that, let's just focus on HR and AI and sort of the things that we're kind of seeing. Ben is absolutely right. There is going to be a dramatic, I think, uplift in use and experimentation and exploration on a more serious level than ever before with the use of AI-related tools and AI-related systems, whereby people are now kind of aggregating the different large language models into sort of the foundations of tools that are going to help us all think about literally every aspect of our businesses, not just from an HR perspective. Albeit, I think HR will benefit massively, from the use of AI, only because it's a perfect use case sat on lots and lots of complicated data spread all over the place across multiple different tools. And we're now wanting to get a much more in-depth look, a three-dimensional look into each of the people who are supporting us in our businesses, and really kind of understand who they are, what skills they bring, what experience and knowledge do they have, and how basically not only can we enable them to kind of like start to run and manage their own careers, their own development and growth and performance, but also at a metadata level, as that stuff rolls up, the view it gives us across the entirety of what they're being, what like a Josh person would call like talent inventory or talent density, to start making commercial decisions about the directions we need to go, what gaps we might have, what remediations and recommendations we can suggest to basically kind of lift and shift and move the business forward. So I think there's going to be a lot of engagement with the use of AI, and I've got a lot of help basically for folks who are a bit panicked about that. But that would be my take.
I'd like to come back to the AI later, but first let's go to Rosie. So whilst Rosie and Margaret are giving their sort of views for this year, if the others can start thinking in terms of AI, what do they see sort of specific where it will perhaps turbocharge the HR world, and some of the things that could go wrong there?
Is it myself or is it Margaret going first?
My bad. Since you're talking now, you can go ahead, Rosie, and then Margaret. Sorry, I think I'm messing it all up today, aren't I?
It's okay, thank you. So what are the things that I think might happen? I think that there's already a trend, and I think I may have mentioned this before in a previous session, that there is already a trend where we're seeing an increase in over-reliance on AI by, I suppose, both sides, but probably more candidate side. It's gotten to the point now where some of my clients will actually put a request that they do not want to see candidates who have not bothered to check their AI written cover letter for any issues, no matter how great their CVs are. And you'd be surprised that this number is quite significant and removes a lot of people automatically from the process, because they seem to be all written by AI these days. Some people just forget to remove the bit where the AI has put insert here for company name and insert here for some examples, and they submit that without reading it. And I suppose with that mindset, I think there is also a bit of a knock-on effect, that I think that whilst technology is great and can be utilized for improving our lives and making us a little bit more efficient and helping us actually look like we're amazing when we may not be so amazing, but it's always good to have a bit of support when you can. The people that adopted too much and stopped thinking for themselves, we also then face the possibility of less innovation, because ideas do come from people actually taking a minute to think about making a peanut butter sandwich. Should I put peanut butter to this or not? So I think that there is a lot that's going to be happening around the AI area. Ironically, this leads into your next question, and sort of this is what I've been thinking. I think that the governments around the world will find themselves at some point having to get involved with creating new types of work when some roles are made redundant due to the efficiency and application of AI and potentially new technology that make the need for human input in those roles redundant. And as such, those people will still need to be working and will still need to be kept as functioning members of society to a degree, so that it will probably fall on the governments around the world to start thinking about that and how they can bridge that, because of course the government still needs the income that comes from people working. It will be interesting to also see what regulations will come in the future in relation to how this technology is applied. And of course, when you have something that is the current trend, you will have a lot of companies being sprouted, coming out from that particular tech. And again, the downside of that is, maybe not this year, maybe one for next year, we may also see a lot of those companies closing down once the bubble has burst, as most bubbles will inevitably do sometimes. I think that's, for me, this year, I feel that there has been an increase in trend. The time to hire for a lot of roles is increasing. I don't know if that's linked to technology, and maybe that's something that should be monitored to see if that increase in time is due to more roles being given to technology or being made redundant due to technology. And if so, how long will that trend continue, and at what point will it require external or political or indeed regulatory intervention? And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Margaret?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have anything that much more to add. I agree with what everyone said. I think that there is a lot of uncertainty in general, like economic uncertainty. So I think potentially it will be harder for new startups to receive funding because of that uncertainty, especially now with, yeah, just with the general political situation. But yeah, I think I'm really curious actually to see what happens with AI, because we've already had this trend this year with companies using, well, not just companies, individuals like myself as well, but using AI to streamline their operations. So whether it's automating any kind of repetitive administrative tasks, or bookkeeping, and AI tools in recruitment that where you can optimize the hiring, AI chatbots and like virtual assistant, that obviously helps us to save a lot of time. So on one hand, that's great. On the other hand, I'm actually really curious, like what's going to happen with hiring this year. And I wish I had a crystal ball to see what's going to happen. So I had a chat with one of our engineers last week, and he said he uses, I think they use AI for coding right now. Sometimes it says it can actually do a better job than engineer doing the coding themselves, and it's easy. It basically says it takes less time to check if the code is correct versus coding from scratch. So he thinks that he saves about 30% of the time because of AI and coding. They have some special tool, I don't remember what it's called, but it's something special for engineers. So on one hand, that's amazing, right? But on the other hand, what's going to happen to hiring? If you can actually save that much time, I think potentially startups may invest in upskilling employees to work with AI tools rather than hiring new talent. And obviously the job market last year, I think, was the worst I've ever seen in my 20 years in recruitment. So yeah, I'm just really curious what's going to happen. Like on one hand, it's amazing. I use it a lot with clients as well. It's very useful. And I think also it gives you access to different talent pools. But on the other hand, I'm a little bit scared, like what's going to happen with, is it gonna go too far? Like how many of these jobs? Yeah, it is, and how many of these jobs will be lost? And yes, you will still need people who have those AI skills, and you will need AI specialists. I'm sure the demand for that will be growing. But what's gonna happen to so many different roles? Like I'm thinking, content writing, the copywriting in general, engineering. There's just a lot of roles that I'm actually really worried. I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Thank you very much for that. The ladies added their bit on the AI part, so perhaps now Benjamin and then Jeff, please. What do you see happening this year when it comes to AI and what AI brings? Ben?
Hi, I think it's really interesting. I've been working in a slightly different sector. I've been working in the legal sector primarily for the last year, and it still wasn't fully adopted. And it was in a very, very prestigious law firm. I think we're going to see a strength in how it's adopted, a bit like Margaret and Rosie have said. But I think this year's going to be the year of proper integration. So, for example, a lot of companies are still not using it because of copyright issues. I know you can get bespoke areas, but it's still kind of a nice to have. I think in the tech space, it's in tech companies that obviously ahead of the curve. But I think if you look at everywhere else, it's still a kind of nice to have. I used ChatGPT to help me with this. Oh, that's nice. So, and that kind of thing. But I think if we look on a broader scale, we're going to see a wider level of adoption and an optimization of what it can do. At the moment, I think AI, it's a bit of a jungle. And I'm kind of hopeful, but also a bit like Margaret said, slightly fearful that we'll get to a point where AI has core uses. So it might well be, to help write some text. It might be images, but there's going to be a baseline that everybody's comfortable using it, and then you're going to have specialist uses. And I think that's what we're going to see with the AI trend. I think from a workplace point of view, I always use the analogy. I use different analogies, but the one I'm going to use is that in the 80s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s, everyone said the role of the secretary would be dead because typing was no longer needed with computers and all of this kind of stuff. And now we're saying, well, we're not going to need maybe anyone to manage people's diaries because AI can do it. I think work evolves, and yes, there may be a small percentage of jobs that are cut, but I think as new technology comes out, we have new jobs that come out and new needs. So the jobs of today are very different from the jobs of 20 years ago. I think the change has just been a bit more gradual than maybe it will be this time. So I think we have to accept that the roles will change, but I don't think the need for people to do them will disappear. And this takes me on to another conversation, which again is still not being applied in a great way, but the skills-based work in that employers are going to need to help their people retrain for new skills within the bounds of what they want to do and their capabilities. But people are going to have to shift how they work, and they're going to have to shift how their priorities are. It might not mean their core capabilities are any different, but they're going to have to do their jobs in a different way. So I get, and this networking event I was at this week, the conclusion we came to is if we are scared, bad things will happen. If we are actually optimistic and talk ourselves up, then it will be okay. And it's kind of the same with the economy. Maybe it's not quite that easy, but I think if we try and embrace this as a positive tool, we're more likely to see some positive outcomes from it.
Here, thank you very much, Benjamin. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Ben, those were great thoughts, overarching. And look, I'll get a little bit more granular, just in terms of the sort of use cases. If you kind of take a look at the sort of employee life cycle, right, which is always a very good thing. So start with attraction, building up a solid employee value proposition, the recruitment process, selection process, onboarding, integration, goal setting, performance, development, on and on. That's, I think, typically the way we're currently looking at the various use cases for AI in the HR realm. Obviously, AI is applicable across the organization, and I think there's a part to play for anybody involved in managing the people function, because there's a change management process that needs to go on. A lot of what I've heard you guys talk about so far is the kind of overriding concern that AI ultimately is going to replace loads of jobs. And the World Economic Forum just recently published, I think 2 weeks ago, its world outlook in terms of the whole kind of future of jobs. And look, nothing horribly surprising there. Arguably jobs that are sort of heavily associated with administration, with rules, with managing data, with even doing relatively simple human transactions, like customer service or sales development reps and things of that nature. Those jobs, and also copywriting and to some extent kind of digital artistry, are definitely going to be more in peril, because that's currently what the capabilities of AI are and what they can bring to the table. Having said that, it's not like there's been a wholesale adoption of all of these tools across the piece. Businesses are very, very wary about a couple of things. One is, how do these AI bots basically operate and work? Is there a level of transparency? Because we need to be able to prove that in case the EU comes knocking on our door in the European realm and says, can you show us how your AI bots work, the purpose for setting them up in the first instance, and where that data is going, and what is it being used for? And that can be daunting, for a business to have to go and prove all that stuff, frankly, without knowing a heck of a lot about the technology they just deployed. But there are ways around that, and hopefully any vendor that you're working with will have had to go through hoops, basically to prove their GDPR compliance and appliance with the EU legislation. So the use cases, I think, that are going to be super interesting would be, you guys talked about the reskilling and upskilling challenge. And I guess the issue there is, well, how do we know what they know now? How do we know about the relative skill adjacency that they need to move to? And then how do we actually know what knowledge they need to obtain in order to kind of be successful moving forward? Clearly, there is going to be, especially if you take the software development perspective, there's going to be a migration, right, away from just hiring loads and loads and loads of developers, basically to kind of manage the entire end-to-end process of creating software. As it turns out, these tools are about 80 to 85% accurate in terms of their ability to kind of go and build out core software, and they're brilliant at bug hunting as well. and improving the models. What they're not necessarily good at is necessarily testing their own work. They often need engineers or software developers to kind of look at what was produced, what the outputs were, and make corrections to them on a regular basis. And I think arguably that will always ever be a job. And I think arguably we're going to have to shift away from the actual doing and manual labor associated with the structuring of workflows and the management of workflows and the completion of workflows, because AI agents can do a lot of that for us if we know what we're setting up in the first instance. And it sounds so easy to say, oh yeah, AI can do that. No, it can't. Not unless you give it very explicit instructions and point it in the right direction and set up the different systems so that they can talk to each other, and then monitor the heck out of those systems to make sure what's happening is what you intended to have happen, and actually keep an eye on that stuff. So it is going to happen. This is going to be the year where AI agents start to come into play. These are things that actually can go do work that actually plug in, excuse me, to all your other systems in the business, and like manage things like supply chains and sales orders and finance statements and HR requests, and basically link those things together so that the AI agents at some point are talking to each other and creating a much more efficient throughput system. But having said that, a relatively uninformed, kind of throughput system that needs human intervention and knowledge and wisdom. So I think this is going to be a real start. It's going to be the start of a transitional year. Nobody needs to panic. 79 million jobs are not going to go away this year, but that process of engaging and exploring and actually starting to implement, test, and drive AI agents is definitely well underway.
Thank you very much. And just before I give my views on that, a quick reset of the conversation for everyone tuning in, either live here on Microsoft Teams. By the way, we're live audio only, or those of you that are tuning in via Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. By the way, if you are tuning in via those social media platforms, unfortunately, we're unable to monitor your questions there. So you would need to join us live here on Microsoft Teams. I have put a link to our Microsoft Teams session on all of those platforms. But if you can't find them, please go to StartUp to ScaleUp.club and find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 141. We're here to help founders with whatever questions you have on your talent journey, whether you want to learn and know and perhaps get some help on a challenge to do with your finding the right people, where and how to find them, how to interview them, how to test them, how to convince and hire them, how to engage them, whether it's part-time or contracting or full-time or advisory or co-founder, maybe how to pay them, how to train and empower them, and all that jazz. All you'd have to do, if you do join us here on Microsoft Teams, is put a question in the chat room. And once I've read the question, then I will unmute you and you'll be able to ask our brilliant panel that we've got on today. If, however, your questions today are not on talent, please save them for the other rooms, for the other conversations we run. We currently do 6 of them: Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, and Thursday's fundraising. And we also do 2 monthly ones. Second Friday of each month, it's Startup Legal Q&A, and third Friday of each month, it's Startup Finances Q&A. And they're all 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And you can actually RSVP to any of them via our site, startup to scaleup.club. Now, what we'll do is we'll wait for some questions to come in. I've just put in a question in the chat if the panelists want to have a look at it. By the way, we're only going to be here for the next 20 minutes. So if you are tuning in via the other platforms and you've got a question, you'd better come in now. Also, for those of you that are live here now, please do that, i.e. raise your hand right now and come in for a question. Otherwise, we'll run out of time. But as far as my view on what AI brings this year and further ahead, there's a couple of things worth mentioning. Number one, if we look at the most important political happenings in our sort of life in the last few centuries, there are two. You've got the French Revolution and the other revolutions that started along that line, as well as, of course, the American Revolution. And that is right at the time when the English Industrial Revolution really kicked in. Number two, you've got the Second World War and the First World War before that, and that is right at the time when electricity was powering up a lot of industries. And then you have, in terms of, again, political stuff, you've got the fall of the Berlin Wall and the sort of start of globalization. And again, that goes alongside the time that the West especially, but also in the East, there was a lot of industrial work being done, and labor kind of lost its touch. And then we come to the last part, which is the rise of populism, both from the left and the right. And this is as globalization kicked in quite a bit. My view on that is that, especially with, let's say, the rise of populism, both from the left and the right, a lot of it's to do with failure of governments to be able to train and help everybody to get on that gravy train of globalization. And I fear something similar may happen if governments around the world are unable to help most people get on the gravy train of AI. And as far as AI itself is concerned, number one, I don't think AI is coming for my job or yours, but definitely somebody who'll know how to use AI better than you and I, they will get our jobs. And as far as kind of that potential for unrest globally, one simple task or one simple fact that is worth mentioning. If I'm not mistaken, I'd done some research a while ago, and if I'm not mistaken, something along the lines of 60% of the world's working population puts food on the table through driving, either because they drive to work, and otherwise, if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to work, or because they actually drive for work, i.e., for a job. And what happens is that if tomorrow, I think it was calculated that within, what was it, within 50 years, no, sorry, within 20 years, at least 40% of the driving would be done automatically. That means you have a very large population around the globe that is not able to put food on the table anymore. And if they haven't been retrained to something else, then you've got potential for unrest. But as far as today is concerned, right now, we are nowhere near these things happening. And as far as, for example, Margaret mentioned that part about the software engineers kind of using AI to code. Unfortunately, I have a feeling, Margaret, that if you and I tried to do that, we wouldn't be able to do it. Why? Because we don't know what we're looking for, whilst an engineer still knows what to look for in terms of testing their code, etc. So my view is embrace it, and I know it's easier said than done, but embrace it and try to utilize it as a tool rather than see it as an adversary. In terms of, I guess, training the world of today for the world of tomorrow, the more we all kind of get acquainted to it, the better it is, because it is here to stay. And the way I see it, actually, I think it's going to have as much an impact in our life as the Industrial Revolution did. So now, enough with politics and philosophy. Let's see if we've got any questions in the chat. If not, I hope my team has been able to look at a question that was sent in that I've put here, but I'll read it out loud for those of you that are tuning in via other streams that we've put out there. So this is from somebody who's leading a seed stage logistics tech startup in Coventry focused on route optimization software for delivery companies. I want to start tracking metrics to improve our hiring and retention strategies. With our current focus on rapid scaling, which HR metrics would be most useful to understand turnover trends and hiring efficiency? Furthermore, how can we regularly monitor these metrics affordably to ensure that our recruitment approach aligns with our business objectives as we grow? Funny thing about this company is that I've looked at their LinkedIn and there's 37 people working there. There's a chief of staff, which I'm assuming, and again, assumption is the mother of all wrongdoing, but I'm assuming maybe the question has come from that chief of staff or perhaps the co-founders, but I don't see anybody on LinkedIn that looks after HR or talent or people. So it's quite an interesting one. And I've seen a lot of startups that, do grow quite a bit without having an HR. But personally, I would start much earlier. Anyway, in terms of HR, I think we'll start with, sorry, I can't hear, who was it? Was it Jeff? Okay, I don't know who started to talk. But
no, sorry, mate.
No, my bad. So let's start with Benjamin, who's probably, Benjamin and Rosie, maybe the most HR-y out of us. So we'll start with Benjamin, Rosie, Jeff, and then Margaret. Let's see, your 1 minute of glory starts here. Benjamin.
Okay. Firstly, for 37 people, personally, it sounds like you're making things very, very complicated. I'm really sort of thinking, I mean, this kind of thing is what you need to have a formula for, and what's the word, and make a technical process when you're getting to like 200 people plus. So, but let's assume that you want to grow and get to that, be a large company or a medium-sized company within the next 6 months. So it's not particularly difficult to monitor what's going on. There's a few, it's basically an employee life cycle question. So firstly, how long is it taking you to recruit the roles? To get someone from advert stage through to they are been made a job offer, and then subsequently how long does it take them to join? Sometimes that's just beyond everyone's control because of notice periods. So generally I would say go for contract issue date rather than actual hire date, but it's worth keeping a note of hire date. Then you want to go through, performance. However, and again, this is a separate topic. How are you monitoring their performance, absence, and then what is their tenure? And if they do leave, why do they leave? At 37 people, I would hope that this is not something that you need to be doing all the time. And at this stage, I'd be focusing on how long is it taking you to get the right hires. And when they're hiring, if they are leaving, they shouldn't be leaving. I mean, given the short-term nature of a startup, initially they shouldn't be leaving already. If they are leaving, then why are they leaving? I think the important thing here is to work out. It's not rocket science to track this. What you need to then do though is actually do something with the data, because if you're looking at the data and this isn't good enough, that's great, but what is going wrong? So do you then need to change your hiring approach? Do you need to think about, well, people are leaving. Is there a founder, or for example, the chief of staff? Do you have a very set vision on it should be this way, which is actually way out of sync with the kind of people that you're recruiting? So what is it that what are you trying to achieve here? And if what you're trying to make sure is that you're doing the best you can do, then you can collect the data however you want. It's obviously easier the smaller the company, but then think about what you're going to do with it. How often are you going to check it? And have you got a commitment to really look yourself in the mirror and the company in the mirror if things aren't working? I'm going to hand over to other panelists. I'm sure they will have other ideas, but that's my initial thoughts, particularly thinking, you're making this a bit complicated.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Rosie.
Thanks, Anton, and thanks, Benjamin. For such a small company, I mean, I'm hoping that it's just a case of not everybody is on LinkedIn, so this shouldn't be such a big issue, but the fact that it is for them, there are some things that you can do to start, one, collecting data, two, utilizing said data, and applying that to creating your sort of I suppose you could call it a strategy and a process for sort of steps to take to make sure that you are capturing issues. So if you're having high churn, no matter how small or big your organization is, I cannot stress enough the importance of your exit interview logs and actually having an actual exit interview process as part of offboarding. A lot of young companies sometimes miss this opportunity to talk to people that are leaving the organization, sometimes because they're leaving for reasons that you may not want to speak to them about, whatever. But I think it's good learning opportunity and also helps you to improve how you actually structure your onboarding, your offboarding, your employee experience of your organization, which feeds into your culture and also ultimately affects your retention and churn. And of course, the bottom line, all of these are impacted, all these things are connected. So the things that I would actually advise at this point, given that you can't see any HR person, some small companies do not have in-house HR people. They sometimes subcontract this out to consultants, similar to myself and other organizations, in which case you would need to be talking to your experts in that front. But if you don't have this resource, then I would be suggesting that you make sure that you, in fact, have a proper onboarding process and onboarding plan, proper 30, 60, 90-day sort of plan for people coming in. What are the key objectives that they need to have hit? What are the milestones that they need to have hit for all of those points? And how are you measuring the effectiveness of those objectives? Who is the owner of ensuring that certain actions take place? Because one of the things that tends to happen with smaller companies, people join a business, there's chaos, there's no real direction in terms of who they report to. And I've seen this happen so many times. And, you do need to have some order. And what is the consistent messaging by leadership for what we're trying to achieve as a business, what we're hoping to achieve, what the mission is, what the values are, as Benjamin's mentioned earlier on, what are the behaviors that you hope to get as the standard behavior that will help to feed into your culture? What are you offering beyond a salary and work to make people want to work for you? If it's training, how are you structuring that? How are you communicating these additional things that may not be written in black and white? I mean, I could talk to this for a long time, so I'm just going to shut up so that other people have a chance to speak.
Thank you. Jeff, your 1 minute of glory starts now, buddy.
I'll try to keep it at 1 minute. Look, Ben and Rosie have already covered off a vast majority of things. I would simply throw in a technological solution. It depends on how big you're going to grow. If you, in fact, are only like 37, 39 people and have no intention to grow, then look, stick to Excel spreadsheets. But actually, to everybody's point, get involved with your people. Make sure that you are very, very clear on your entire employee value proposition, what you're going to pay for what work to get done, and why it's powerful and beneficial to come work for your company. The things, to Rosie's point, you want to cover off because you probably can't pay ultra competitive rates, especially if you're a small software company. You want to basically ensure that your mission and purpose and vision are amazing, are inspiring, are going to give people a sense of agency and something powerful that's sort of bigger than who they are, and that they will come and learn and engage and enjoy and feel like they belong, and get sort of lifelong learning as a result of it. If, unfortunately, if those things are missing, then that could be part of your problem. Maybe you're overpromising and under-delivering in the hiring process. Maybe once people join, you suddenly fall out of love with them, and they become just another worker to get a bunch of stuff done. Maybe you're not thinking holistically about that individual's lifetime of experience or career experience with you, and you need to, as opposed to just watching the bottom line and trying to cut expense wherever you possibly can do, and then kind of generate as much revenue as you can. There's a lot more to it than that. So, but a tool like, off the top of my head, some of the best small to medium-sized enterprise tools for HR that kind of cover everything from recruitment all the way through to retirement, and do a great job of it, and help you with these metrics and measures to basically ensure that you're on track and that you're as close to good, if not great, as you possibly can get. Would be a tool like Factorial, as an example, a company based Barcelona, global application, general software, but really clever, and very affordable, very affordable. So I would look at a tool like that, basically just to help you kind of manage it all. And with that, I'll be quiet and pass it along.
Thank you very much. And speaking of tools, I have tagged all of you on our live stream on LinkedIn. So if you see the latest tag I've made, I'd be very grateful if you can put any tools in there based on this question that are either free or very cheap, please, if you wouldn't mind commenting with it. Margaret, anything to add?
Yeah, so apart from, in terms of the HR metrics, apart from time to hire, and I think someone mentioned cost per hire in terms of tracking all the recruitment costs, I would add tracking your turnover rate. So just identifying how often employees leave. You can segment that by role or a team, just to spot any patterns and address any kind of retention issues. Also retention rate, are you tracking how long employees stay, especially in critical roles? And that's why really good onboarding is important. We also track offer acceptance rate, so that will really show you how attractive your offers are to candidates, and that can guide any adjustment to compensation and benefits. And another thing that we do at Mixmax is employee net promoter score. So we actually use Typeform surveys, and that really just measures employee satisfaction and likelihood to recommend your startup as a workplace. So yeah, the employee NPS is great. In terms of tools, I mean, I agree about Factorial. I've heard really good things about it. We use something called Bamboo HR, which has built-in analytics for startups, and that seems to work quite well for us. You can also use low-cost or free tools like Google Sheets, Trello, or Notion to manually track data for smaller teams, especially if you're not looking to grow that much. And I would also schedule quarterly reviews of these metrics and involve team lists to align hiring strategies with business goals.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much. We are now 2 minutes away from shutting shop for today. So perhaps we can get some parting words and closing remarks. What we're going to do, we'll start with the ladies of the house, Rosie, Margaret, and then we'll go on to the fellows, Benjamin and Jeff. What are your parting words for today, please? Rosie?
Thanks, Anton. Well, as you know, if you're starting a business, and as someone who started a business myself, it's never easy. It can feel like donkey work, and I'm going to use the word donkey work. It's hard work, but it can also be very rewarding. There's a lot of learning and fulfillment that you can get from it. And the good thing is you do have support. You have channels like this, and you have access to panels like this that can really help you to make informed decisions and won't break the bank. So do tune in next time, and it'll be good to speak to yourselves directly as well on the call.
Oh, okay, it's me. So, yeah, well, firstly, thank you everyone for joining. Building a startup definitely isn't just about solving problems that your business is trying to solve. It's definitely about being persistent, adaptable, leading with purpose. So whether you're figuring out how to hire your first engineer, or how to mediate team conflicts, or how do you keep everyone motivated with limited resources, just remember, it's the small, consistent actions that build great companies. So focus on fostering trust, collaboration, staying true to your mission, and definitely take care of your team, because that's your greatest asset.
Thank you, Margaret. Ben?
Yes, my closing remarks are, I think this year is going to be interesting. I think be flexible, have a plan and have a contingency plan if you can. Think about what skills you're going to need, truly, and do a self-evaluation if you are a founder about where your gaps are and where your worries are, and bring someone in who can help make that feel better. And yeah, keep tuning in. We always get some interesting and different questions, so you might just get the question that you think, that really helps me, or ask the question. So thank you for joining, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Last but not least, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Anton. And thanks, everybody, for your insight. I feel like, even though I'm supposed to be on this quote-unquote expert panel, I think every time I joined, I learned something new, which is brilliant. Margaret, really appreciate your comments, as they were very much along the lines that I was going to talk about. But look, this is going to be a wacky year, hopefully a wonderful year at the same time. But there's also going to be a lot of upheaval. There's going to be a lot of disruption, a lot of strange things coming at us that we possibly didn't see necessarily. And it's not just going to be in the US. I think it's going to be across Europe and in the world. Having said all of that, to Ben's point, contingency plans are key. Adaptive, it's not the strongest that survive, right? According to Darwin's law, it's the most adaptable. And I think that's really what you have to do, is kind of continuously go through what I call scenario planning, what people call scenario planning, and just basically run the numbers in a lot of different directions, including the bad and the ugly. Because you're going to have a plan for that potentially as well. I hope it never happens to you, and I hope it's nothing but prosperous and growth everywhere. But look, this happens to the best of us. So better to plan in advance, and also better to hold, kind of employee forums and luncheons or lunch and learns or whatever you want to call them. But keep your people informed, and also get their opinions. Make them part of your business. Make sure that everybody realizes the impact that they have on the bottom line, and importantly, on the future of the company. In that way, you're never alone in terms of running the company, and everybody then feels like they've got something to say, that you care about what they say. And importantly, that they then kind of step up to commitment to support the company's growth. And with that, I shall be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Well, huge thanks to all four of you for your brilliant input, and thank you for your time today. Also, thank you to those that tuned in interactively here on Microsoft Teams, and obviously those that tuned in via our live streams on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Just a quick reminder, we run 6 regular themes, or Q&As rather. Mondays, as you saw today, it's talent. Tuesdays, it's product and tech. Wednesdays, it's growth. Thursdays, it's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's legal. And third Friday of each month, it's finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. You can RSVP to any of them via our site, StartUp to ScaleUp.club. But ideally, what you really want to do is join our WhatsApp group, which you'll find on our website. And there you'll be able to get alerts to all future sessions that we do. As far as my parting words are concerned, just remember, the startup journey can be both difficult but also quite exciting. So try to have some fun in the meantime, and be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, hopefully see you tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech, where we've got another brilliant panel on that theme. And have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are. Thank you again, and God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.